In the world of alternative rock, few figures stir as much controversy as Morrissey. The former frontman of the Smiths has never been the type to keep quiet, especially when it comes to voicing his opinions about fellow musicians. Whether he's on stage, in interviews, or simply observed from afar, Morrissey has always carried himself with sharp wit and a tongue that cuts deep. His combination of brutal honesty, literary wordplay, and biting humor made him one of music's most feared commentators. While he was admired for his haunting melodies and poetic lyrics, Morrissey became equally infamous for the way he skewered other artists. Time and again, he proved himself a master of the scathing remark, a man capable of wounding reputations with just a sentence or two. For decades, his interviews were like verbal battlefields. No star was off limits, no reputation too sacred. From global pop icons to indie darlings, Morrissey's critiques landed like daggers. And these weren't light-hearted disagreements between peers. They were calculated, intentional, and often devastating to the targets involved. Today we're diving into 6 of his most savage takedowns, legendary clashes that continue to echo in the music world. These stories show why Morrissey's tongue was often considered sharper than any blade, and why so many artists feared being on the wrong side of his judgment. 6. Damon Albarn. We begin with a feud that cuts straight into the heart of Britpop. Damon Albarn, the stylish frontman of Blur and creative mind behind hits like Song 2, found himself in Morrissey's crosshairs during the mid-1990s. At the height of Britpop, Blur were celebrated as the new champions of English culture. But Morrissey wasn't impressed. In his eyes, Albarn represented everything phony about alternative music in Britain. Morrissey had built his reputation writing gritty working-class anthems drawn from real-life experience. Albarn, on the other hand, came from a comfortable middle-class background. Yet he was performing as though he were the authentic, common man's musician. According to critics and journalists, Morrissey saw this as nothing more than costume play. Albarn pretending to live a life of hardship he'd never actually known. Morrissey reportedly accused him of performing poverty for audiences who'd never experienced it. What made matters worse was that Blur were being hailed as cultural innovators. Receiving credit for styles and ideas Morrissey believed he and the Smiths had pioneered years earlier. He allegedly dismissed their success as artistic theft disguised as tribute. 5. Thom Yorke. Next, at number 5, comes a philosophical clash with another titan of melancholy, Thom Yorke, the enigmatic frontman of Radiohead. The rivalry reportedly sparked in the late 1990s when Radiohead's OK Computer and subsequent albums propelled the band to international fame. Critics began comparing Yorke's bleak experimental style with Morrissey's lyrical explorations of depression and alienation. But Morrissey bristled at the comparison. For decades he had written about sadness and despair with wit, melody, and accessibility. Yorke, by contrast, wrapped his emotions in abstract electronic soundscapes. To Morrissey, this wasn't raw honesty. It was pretentious, intellectual posturing. He once suggested that Radiohead made depression sound like a university lecture rather than human suffering. According to insiders, Morrissey felt insulted being placed alongside Yorke on greatest depressing music lists, complaining that Yorke hid behind computers and effects because he lacked the courage to be genuinely vulnerable. Yorke himself rarely responded to such attacks. In interviews, he even praised the Smiths, calling their music important, but Morrissey allegedly dismissed Radiohead's experimentalism as nothing more than technology masking a lack of emotional truth. 4. Madonna. At number 4, we shift to one of the biggest pop stars on earth, Madonna. If there was ever an artist Morrissey seemed to loathe most, it was her. This clash wasn't simply a difference in taste. To Morrissey, Madonna symbolized the complete commercialization of art. From the moment she burst onto the scene in the 1980s, Madonna became famous for her constant reinvention. She changed her style, image, and message, not for personal growth, Morrissey claimed, but for marketability. Where he pursued authenticity and poetic vulnerability, Madonna chased headlines and sales. He found her deliberate shock tactics, especially her use of sexuality and controversy, cheap and hollow. Morrissey reportedly accused her of prostituting art for profit and described her as everything wrong with American culture. Fake rebellion packaged and sold to people who wanted to believe. They were witnessing something real. The feud intensified when Madonna began, borrowing from underground and alternative scenes to fuel her mainstream hits. Morrissey felt she was stealing credibility without giving anything genuine in return. Though Madonna herself never acknowledged his barbs, Morrissey allegedly never stopped seeing her as proof that true artistry had been drowned out by corporate showmanship. 3. Ian Brown. Coming in at number 3 is a hometown rivalry that hit close to home. Ian Brown, the swaggering frontman of the Stone Roses, clashed with Morrissey in a battle over Manchester's very identity. By the late 1980s, the Stone Roses were leading the Manchester movement, fusing rock with rave culture. Their fresh psychedelic dance rock style catapulted them into the spotlight. But Morrissey, who had already carved out Manchester's reputation with the Smiths, reportedly saw Brown as an interloper. To him, the Roses' fame was flashy and temporary, hype without depth. He became increasingly irritated as journalists credited the Stone Roses with putting Manchester on the global music map. Morrissey felt that honor belonged to the Smiths, and he allegedly accused Brown of stealing recognition that wasn't his. For Morrissey, this wasn't just professional jealousy, it was about legacy. He saw himself as the city's true poet and Brown's rising influence as an undeserved rewriting of history. 2. Liam Gallagher at number 2. The feud reaches volcanic levels. Enter Liam Gallagher, the outspoken frontman of Oasis. If Ian Brown challenged Morrissey's place in Manchester, Liam Gallagher tried to replace him outright. In the mid-1990s, Oasis exploded with massive anthems and even bigger egos. Liam proudly declared that his band was the greatest of all time, dismissing the Smiths and everything before them. To Morrissey, this was unforgivable arrogance. Where he had poured intelligence and emotional truth into his lyrics, Liam strutted around with brash confidence, trading insults like a schoolyard bully. Morrissey reportedly seethed at the idea that Oasis were being hailed as Manchester's greatest musical export. He described their music as loud noise for people who mistake volume for passion and arrogance for confidence. Liam, of course, thrived on the controversy. He continued to mock older artists while basking in the chaos. For Morrissey, Gallagher epitomized everything shallow about modern rock culture, empty bravado without the artistry to back it up. 1. Bob Geldof. And finally, topping the list at number 1 is Morrissey's most infamous enemy, Bob Geldof. Unlike the others, this wasn't a battle about music style, it was about purpose. Geldof, the Irish musician turned activist, had launched Band Aid in 1984 and organized Live Aid the following year to fight famine in Africa. These projects made him a global humanitarian icon. Morrissey, however, despised it. To him, charity singles were nothing more than emotional blackmail set to music. He argued that genuine social issues should be addressed through authentic art, not celebrity-driven fundraising spectacles. He accused Geldof of using tragedy to polish his own reputation, calling celebrity activism a scam that helped the stars more than the suffering. Geldof brushed off the criticism as cynical nonsense and continued his humanitarian work. But Morrissey never forgave what he saw as the commercialization of compassion, and his loathing for Geldof became legendary.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.